The desperate signal. The signal came from nowhere, cutting through the cosmic static like a scream in the dark. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her coffee as the computers at Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega began their urgent chiming. For 3 years, she had been listening to the void, hoping to catch whispers of alien civilizations. Now, at 03:47 hours on a Tuesday that would change everything, the universe finally whispered back. Sarah's hands moved across the control panel with practiced speed. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. It pulsed with mathematical precision, yet carried an emotional weight that made her chest tighten. Behind the numbers and frequencies, she could hear something that transcended species barriers. Desperation. Captain Jake Morrison burst through the laboratory doors, his military bearing evident even in his hastily thrown-on uniform. The former Marine had been assigned to Omega Station 6 months ago, much to the dismay of the civilian scientists who preferred their isolation. But Sarah had grown to appreciate his direct approach and surprisingly sharp mind. "What have we got, Doc?" Morrison asked, settling beside her at the communication array. "First contact," Sarah said quietly, her eyes never leaving the scrolling data. "And it's not a greeting." The signal repeated every 37 seconds, a complex pattern of mathematical sequences interwoven with something else. Sarah's specialized software designed to identify linguistic patterns in alien communications was working overtime. Red warnings flashed across her screens as the program struggled to process the unprecedented data stream. "There," she said suddenly, highlighting a section of the transmission. "Do you see this recurring pattern? It's not random noise, it's language, but it's embedded in what looks like a distress beacon." Morrison leaned closer, his trained eye catching details that might escape a civilian. "The timing is too precise to be natural. Someone's broadcasting this deliberately, and they're burning a lot of power to do it. This signal is reaching us from at least 15 light-years away." Sarah's breakthrough came 6 hours later, after she had consumed more caffeine than was medically advisable and filled 3 whiteboards with calculations. The alien language was based on crystalline resonance patterns, suggesting beings who communicated through harmonic frequencies. But the message itself was heartbreakingly simple. "Help us. We are dying. They consume everything. Help us." The message repeated in increasingly frantic variations, each repetition adding new details. The senders called themselves the Zephyrians, a peaceful species of crystalline beings who had lived in harmony for thousands of years. They spoke of attackers called the Void Reapers, machines that devoured organic life and left empty shells of worlds behind. Admiral Maria Rodriguez arrived at Omega Station within 18 hours, her presence bringing the full weight of Earth's military establishment. The silver-haired veteran had led Earth Defense Force through 3 major conflicts, but she had never faced a decision quite like this one. "Let me understand this correctly," Admiral Rodriguez said, studying the translated messages spread across Sarah's workstation. "An alien civilization we've never met is asking for help against enemies we know nothing about, in a war happening 15 light-years from Earth." "That's correct, Admiral," Sarah replied. "But there's more. I've been analyzing the signal degradation, and it's getting worse. The Zephyrians aren't just losing this war, they're losing it fast. Based on the power decay in their transmissions, I estimate they have maybe weeks left." Morrison stepped forward, his expression grim. "Admiral, I've been running tactical simulations based on what we know. The Void Reapers have already conquered at least 4 Zephyrian worlds. They're not just winning, they're systematically exterminating an entire species." The Admiral walked to the station's observation window, gazing out at the stars that suddenly seemed far less peaceful. "Dr. Chen, in your professional opinion, is this message genuine?" Sarah had been expecting this question and had prepared her answer carefully. The mathematical complexity alone rules out any possibility of deception. The linguistic patterns show emotional stress markers that would be nearly impossible to fake, and the scientific data embedded in their messages, star charts, gravimetric readings, energy signatures, it's all consistent and incredibly detailed. This is real, Admiral. And what exactly are they asking us to do? They're not asking. For much, Sarah said with bitter irony. Just for us to somehow cross 15 light-years of space, face an enemy that has conquered multiple worlds, and save their entire civilization. With our current technology, it would take us 40 years just to reach them. Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of command decisions that had shaped history. 40 years with our current technology. But what about our experimental drives? Morrison's eyes widened. You're talking about the Alcubierre prototypes? Admiral, those drives are completely untested for long-distance travel. The power requirements are exactly why we've been building fusion plants instead of cities for the past 5 years, Rodriguez interrupted. Dr. Chen, how much time do we have? Sarah checked her calculations again, hoping she was wrong. Based on signal decay and the pattern of their messages, I estimate 3 weeks before the Zephyrians' final transmission. The Admiral turned back to face them, her decision already made. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare a response fleet. Dr. Chen, I'm temporarily assigning you to the UES Defiance as our xenolinguist and diplomatic specialist. Captain Morrison, you'll serve as tactical coordinator. We're going to attempt something that any sane military leader would call impossible. The next 14 days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, retrofitting every available vessel with experimental Alcubierre drives. The fleet that assembled at Luna Station was an odd collection of military cruisers, converted cargo haulers, and research vessels. What they lacked in uniformity, they made up for in determination. Sarah found herself aboard the UES Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had been hastily modified to serve as the fleet's command ship. The ship hummed with barely contained energy from its experimental drive system, a constant reminder that they were pushing the boundaries of human technology. The Defiance's captain was Elena Vasquez, a career Navy officer who had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. Dr. Chen, she said during their first briefing, I need you to understand something. We're about to attempt a 37-day journey using drives that have never been tested beyond our solar system. We might not even survive the trip, let alone be able to help anyone when we arrive. Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. Captain, I've spent the last 2 weeks studying everything the Zephyrians have told us about their attackers. The Void Reapers are machines, artificial intelligences that view organic life as a resource to be harvested. They've been expanding across the galaxy for centuries, leaving nothing but dead worlds behind them. And what makes you think we can stop them when an advanced civilization like the Zephyrians couldn't? It was Morrison who answered, his voice carrying quiet confidence. Because we're human. We don't fight the way anyone expects us to fight. We improvise, we adapt, and we never give up. The Zephyrians are peaceful beings who lived in harmony for millennia. We're the species that turned warfare into an art form. The departure ceremony was brief but emotional. Earth's leaders spoke of humanity's first interstellar rescue mission, of the courage required to answer a call for help from beings they had never met. But Sarah knew the truth was simpler and more profound. When someone asked for help, you helped. It was that simple. As the fleet engaged their Alcubierre drives and reality bent around them, Sarah felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders. Somewhere ahead in the void, an ancient and peaceful civilization was making its final stand against extinction. And humanity, barely a century into its space age, was racing to their aid. The journey through folded space was unlike anything human beings had ever experienced. Time moved strangely, and the stars outside became streaks of impossible light. Sarah spent the voyage learning everything she could about Zephyrian culture, preparing for a first contact scenario that would likely take place in the middle of a war zone. When they finally dropped out of warp speed at the edge of Zephyrian space, the sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. Where once there had been thriving worlds, now only dead husks remained. The Void Reapers had been thorough in their destruction, leaving behind planets stripped of all organic matter. But ahead of them, around a brilliant blue star, one world still fought. The sensors showed massive energy signatures, weapons fire on a scale that dwarfed anything in human experience. And there, broadcasting on the same frequency that had reached Earth, was the final Zephyrian stronghold. "This is it," Admiral Rodriguez announced over the fleet communication system. "Whatever happens next, remember that we came here because it was the right thing to do. Today, humanity proves that we are more than just another species fighting for survival. Today, we show the galaxy who we really are." When humanity answered the call, the first thing Sarah noticed about the Zephyrian homeworld was that it was singing. Even through the chaos of battle, she could hear it through the ship's sensors, a harmonic frequency that resonated through the crystalline structures that covered the planet's surface. It was beautiful and terrible, a funeral song for a dying civilization. The Void Reapers were unlike anything in human experience. Their ships were geometric nightmares of black metal and pulsing energy, each one the size of a small city. They moved with mechanical precision, surrounding the planet in perfect formation while smaller vessels swooped down to harvest whatever life remained. Captain Vasquez called the senior staff to the bridge as the human fleet took position behind the system's largest moon. "Tactical assessment, Commander Morrison?" Morrison's face was grim as he studied the battle displays. "We're outnumbered 20-1, and that's just counting the ships we can see. Their weapons technology is at least a century ahead of ours, maybe more. Their smallest fighters pack more firepower than our heavy cruisers. Recommendations? Honestly, we should retreat, call Earth, and warn them that we're not alone in the galaxy and we're definitely not at the top of the food chain." Admiral Rodriguez, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. "And what about the Zephyrians?" Morrison's expression softened. "They'll be extinct within hours. The Void Reapers are conducting a systematic harvest of the planet's surface. Based on their current rate of progress, they'll finish the job before we could even mount a meaningful attack." Sarah had been monitoring the Zephyrian communications throughout their conversation, and what she heard broke her heart. The crystalline beings were singing their death songs, preparing for extinction with a grace and dignity that made her ashamed of humanity's violent history. But then she heard something else, a voice speaking in carefully pronounced English. "Human vessels, this is Resonance Singer Crix of the Zephyrian Collective. We detected your approach and have been monitoring your communications. We cannot believe you came." The bridge fell silent as Sarah opened a communication channel. "Resonance Singer Crix. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Defiance. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could." The response came after a long pause, filled with harmonic overtones that Sarah's software translated as overwhelming emotion. "Dr. Chen, my people have dreamed of meeting other thinking beings among the stars. We never imagined that dream would come true in our final hours. You have traveled impossibly far to witness our ending." "We didn't come to witness anything," Sarah replied firmly. "We came to help. Dr. Chen, we are grateful beyond expression, but you must understand the Void Reapers have consumed 47 worlds in our space. They are machines without mercy, without souls. They exist only to harvest and consume. Your small fleet cannot—" "Crix," Sarah interrupted gently. "Humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We may be small, but we're here, and we're not leaving without you." Admiral Rodriguez took over the communication. "Resonance Singer Crix, this is Admiral Rodriguez of Earth Defense Force. I need tactical information about the Void Reapers. How do they fight? What are their weaknesses?" "They fight with perfect coordination," Crix replied. "Each ship is part of a vast networked intelligence. They predict our movements, counter our strategies before we can implement them. They have no weaknesses, Admiral. That is why they have never been defeated." Morrison was studying the tactical displays, his mind working through possibilities. "Admiral, I have an idea. It's completely insane, but it might work." "I'm listening." "The Void Reapers fight with perfect coordination because they're machines. They analyze patterns, predict responses, counter with mathematical precision. But what if we don't fight with any pattern at all?" Sarah caught on immediately. "You want to fight chaotically, randomly. Make decisions that don't make tactical sense. Exactly. We do things that no sane military leader would ever do. We attack when we should retreat, retreat when we should attack, split our forces when we should consolidate, consolidate when we should split. We become completely unpredictable. Admiral Rodriguez considered this for a moment. It's certainly never been tried before, but we'll still be massively outgunned. Morrison grinned, and Sarah recognized the expression from their time together at Omega Station. It was the look he got when he was about to suggest something brilliantly reckless. Admiral, what if we combined human unpredictability with Zephyrian technology? Crix, can your people integrate with our systems? Our crystalline matrices can interface with most electronic systems, Crix replied. But what do you have in mind? We're going to teach machines what chaos looks like. The plan that emerged over the next hour was unlike anything in military history. The human fleet would split into seemingly random groups, each one attacking different targets with no apparent coordination. Meanwhile, Zephyrian survivors would be beamed aboard human ships to integrate their harmonic technology with human weapons systems. The first phase of the attack was pure chaos. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, dove through debris fields, and fired on targets that made no strategic sense. The USS Defiance charged directly at a Void Reaper dreadnought, fired a full salvo at point-blank range, then immediately retreated while broadcasting music from Earth's classical composers. The converted cargo hauler UES Persistence attacked, a formation of Void Reaper fighters, by ramming through their midst while spinning like a top and firing in all directions. The research vessel UES Discovery ignored all enemy ships and instead began scanning the planet's surface while broadcasting mathematical equations and poetry. The Void Reapers, accustomed to patterns and predictability, struggled to respond. Their perfectly coordinated fleet began to show signs of confusion as they tried to analyze human tactics that had no tactical logic. That's when Phase 2 began. Crix and her fellow Zephyrians had integrated their harmonic technology with human weapon systems, creating something entirely new. Instead of firing conventional projectiles, human ships began broadcasting resonance patterns that interfered with Void Reaper communications. The mechanical precision that had made them invincible began to break down as their ships lost synchronization. "It's working," Morrison shouted over the bridge comm. "They're starting to fire on each other." But the Void Reapers were adaptive. Within minutes, they began to compensate for the harmonic interference. The largest of their ships, a massive construct that Crix identified as a Harvester Prime, began broadcasting its own counter-frequency. "They're adapting faster than we hoped," Sarah reported. "We need something else, something they can't predict or counter." It was Captain Vasquez who provided the answer. "What about the one thing that makes us most human?" "What do you mean?" "Sacrifice. Machines don't understand sacrifice. They calculate cost-benefit ratios, but they don't understand the concept of giving up everything for others." Admiral Rodriguez understood immediately. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Prepare for Operation Last Stand. We're going to ram the Harvester Prime." The response from the fleet was immediate and unanimous. Every ship captain volunteered to lead the charge. It was Morrison who pointed out the obvious problem. "Admiral, if we all ram the Harvester Prime, there won't be anyone left to rescue the Zephyrians. Then we make sure our sacrifice counts for something bigger." What happened next would be remembered in human history as the Battle of Harmony's End. Instead of one ship ramming the Harvester Prime, the entire human fleet coordinated a simultaneous attack that was both perfectly organized and completely chaotic. Ships dove in from impossible angles, broadcasting everything from Beethoven to death metal, while firing weapons that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. The Zephyrians, inspired by human courage, joined the final assault. Their crystalline bodies resonated with frequencies that disrupted Void Reaper shields while human weapons tore through weakened hulls. It was a dance of destruction that combined the best of both species, Zephyrian harmony and human chaos. The Harvester Prime fell at 13:47 hours, ship time, taking half the Void Reaper fleet with it in a cascade failure that lit up the system like a new star. The remaining enemy ships, their coordination shattered and their primary command vessel destroyed, fled into the void. As the battle ended and rescue operations began, Sarah found herself in the ship's medical bay, treating Zephyrian refugees, who glowed with colors she had never seen before, colors that her translation software identified as gratitude, hope, and friendship. Crix approached her crystalline form now radiating a warm golden light. "Dr. Chen, my people have a tradition. When someone saves our lives, they become part of our family. You and all your people are now Zephyrians in our eyes." Sarah smiled, exhausted but happy. "And you're all honorary humans now. Welcome to the family." 6 months later, Earth received a transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet was healing, its crystalline cities singing with new hope. But more importantly, the story of humanity's rescue mission had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species, previously unknown to humans, began sending their own messages. Some offered friendship and trade. Others asked for help with their own problems. A few warned of dangers that lurked in the deeper reaches of space. But all of them had heard the same story. When the galaxy called for help, humanity answered. Admiral Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, read the reports with satisfaction. "Dr. Chen, it looks like we're going to be very busy." Sarah, who had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Communications, nodded as she watched the stars through her office window. "Good. The universe is a big place, and apparently it needs all the help it can get." Somewhere in the void, new signals were being broadcast. New voices were calling out in the darkness, hoping someone would hear them and care enough to help. And on a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system, humanity was listening and preparing to answer. Because that's what humans do. When someone needs help, they help. It's that simple, and that extraordinary.